In this video, I will help you gear up your character quickly the moment you reach level 70 in the Burning Crusade Classic. I've also added a timeline so you can easily skip to whatever you're looking for. The first thing I would recommend you to do is to head to Shadowmoon Valley and learn your flying skill. Yeah, you can follow the guide without a flying mount, but everything is just going to be a lot easier, especially if you have got yourself epic flying. Next, open up your reputation tab and try to look for any Burning Crusade reputations at Honored or Revered. The reason being that at the Quatermasters you can purchase some level 70 rare items. A new thing in Anniversary is that we can also buy PvP items at Honored, and even though these are PvP items, then they're honestly not too bad as a fresh level 70 character. Exactly why I also told people to follow my 60 to 70 dungeon leveling guide, because by following that video you will already be Honored or Revered with most factions. Those of you who haven't pre-farmed Honor or BG marks can just skip to the next step, but in Stormwind City and Orgrimmar, you can exchange Honor and Battleground marks into High Warlord and Grand Marshal level 70 PvP items. These are going to be sets, but there will also be offset pieces, for example epic cloaks, boots, belts, and braces, and even though these are PvP items, then some of these epics will be useful when you're going to raid, especially as a tank where you might need some of the resilience. Those of you with leftover gold could also head to the auction house and start browsing through different green, rare, or epic items. The rare items should honestly not be too expensive, which is why I've also decided to share some of those you should be paying attention to. As Enhancement Shaman and Hunter, look out for the different mail items, and as a Rogue and a Feral Druid, look out for the letter. Spellcasters will benefit a lot from the staff and chest, but the ring and also belt isn't too bad either. Holy Paladins and Resto Shamans should be looking out for this amazing healing shield. There's also a great mace you can combine, and the mace and staff is great for those of you playing Resto Druid, but also Priest. Arms Warriors and Retro Paladins will benefit from the Crystal Forged War Axe. This is also a decent option as a Hunter, combined together with the bow at the top left. As a Dagger Rogue, but also as a Hunter, you might like the Dagger. Elemental Shamans will benefit a lot from these items, as they're providing a lot of spell crit and spell damage. What about bind and equip tanking items? Well, those will be covered in the profession section, as they're crafted with either blacksmithing or leatherworking. We can also get guaranteed rare items by questing in the open world. But before I show you all the different locations, then I would also like to let you know that I've added each individual starting quest to the description, and by clicking on those links you will be redirected to a page which guides you through all the different quest chains in order to get to the final part where you eventually unlock your rare item. But before we start questing, then you should also be downloading a rare scanning add-on, as it will warn you whenever you're close to one of those. And yes, it will be important to slay them, as they've got a 100% chance to drop a blue item. Alright, the first zone I'll cover is Nagrand, as this is not as gear dependent as a fresh level 70 character. The goblin tells us to loot 3 air elemental gas. Those are collected at the nearby area by slaying dust howlers. The moment you have got all 3, you head back to the goblin and you pick up the follow-up. The follow-up allows us to get a new rare cloak. There's going to be 3 different versions, but first you gotta slay an elite and of course also loot one of the nearby eggs. Those of you with flying mount will have an easy time, as you can just fly up here. Else you gotta use the nearby item to start flying in the air and try to aim for the location with the egg. The moment you have looted the egg, an elite will spawn, and you gotta make sure you're slaying it, as it's dropping an item we will also need to provide. I would recommend you to be a total of 2 people for the quest. The moment you have got both items, you then head back to the goblin and claim your new rare cloak. At the northeastern part of the zone, you can find a camp where there's going to be different mastery quests. These mastery quests are telling you to slay different beasts all over Nagrand, even elites, but because they're slaying quests, then I would also recommend you to group up with other people. At the end, you can choose a throw for a rogue or a warrior, a spellcasting wand, a gun for hunters, and a librum, idol, or totem for healers. The last quest I would recommend you to do in the zone is going to be Ring of Blood. This requires you to bring a total of 5 people, as you'll need to slay high-level elites, and there's going to be many different parts. Each of these are rewarding a lot of gold, some different potions you can keep for when you're going to do dungeons or eventually raids, and at the end you can choose yourself a new rare weapon. I know there isn't a ranged weapon for hunters, but I just covered the other quest where we could choose a gun. Else there's basically going to be something useful for every single class in the game. Moving on to Blade Edge, and the first location here is for Alliance only. In the tower, you'll find this NPC called Dogwork. He has a high chance to drop an item beginning a quest that will be important to do, especially as a melee character. As Horde, you'll need to head to another location in Blade Edge. Here there will be many different ogres, and you gotta slay everything, even the raptors as well, as they have a chance to drop an item beginning a quest. Both factions will now need to do a long quest chain, and at the end you can choose between 6 amazing items. Especially the leather legs here are useful for many different classes due to all the expertise and hit it provides. However, it is a rather long quest chain, so if you don't need any of these rewards, skip to the next zone, which is Netherstorm. In Netherstorm there's many things to be done. You can for example head to this location where you can speak to the NPC here and get an item. The item you gotta activate or well use at some nearby corpses to burn them. The moment you have burned all of those, you head back and you claim your reward. Here we can get our pre-red bisque gloves as a retro paladin, even though their green quality, they're so insane when you start raiding. Next, head to Stormspire, and on your way, try to look for either 1 or 2 more players, as you'll need to do an elite quest. This is done at the northern part of the zone, where you gotta slay these giants. There will also be a follow-up done at the exact same location. The rewards are going to be a melee DPS neck, a cloak for spellcasters, or a decent ring for many different healers. Before you disband your party, then make sure to head more to the east. At this location there's going to be many quests to do, the most important, the Ethereum, as it's a long quest chain. At the area, or well at the nearby area, you gotta slay some normal creatures and later on elites. Is it that important? Definitely. At the end you can choose 5 different weapons. There's going to be a 2-hand axe for either retro paladins or arms warrior, a 2-hand staff for feral druids, or a dagger for anyone playing a rogue or who would like a quick 1-hand weapon. The judgment staff is for resto druids or a priest, and as a spellcaster you could instead be going for the impulse taser as it's providing spell hit. If this is going to be your first level 70 character, then you gotta head to area 52 and pick up Consortium Crystal Collection. It is a long quest chain, but important to do, because at the end you will be getting the key to Arcatraz, and in Arcatraz there's an item you gotta collect for your Karasan attunement. You could of course just find someone else with the Arcatraz key and invite those into your party, so you can obtain the key fragment for the Karasan attunement, but I would honestly recommend you to complete the quest chain. First, we can for example choose between these 3 rare items, and the leather legs are amazing for melee DPS. At the final part, you can either choose a cloak for healers, a spellcaster belt, a belt for hunters and enhancement shamans, a belt for rogues and druids, and last but not least, a tanking belt, and of course, the Arcatraz key. There's one more thing you would like to do before you're done with Netherstorm. Those of you who has decided to help the Scryers gotta head to Shadowmoon City. At the banking area, you will be able to speak to the Blood Elf here and pick up a pre-quest. It's telling you to head to the inn in area 52 in Netherstorm. Those of you who has decided to help Aldor don't need to pick up any pre-quest, but you gotta head to the same area, where we can also pick up the first part in this longer chain. All the different steps will of course be left in the description. At the end, you can choose between 2 different rewards, but what we can choose all depends on what faction you have decided to help. These are the Scryers rewards, where as Aldor, you will instead be able to choose either a healing neck or a melee DPS ring. Moving on to the next zone, Shadowmoon Valley. At the marked area, you will find this Blood Elf patrolling around. It is an elite, so you should be in a party. Loot the journal and accept the quest. This is handed in to a nearby crystal you will find up here. The amazing thing is that there will only be one more thing you need to do, and then you can choose a new rare ring. However, you should assemble a party of 5 people, as the next thing will be so difficult. Many elites will spawn, and you gotta kill all of them in order to complete the quest. Another thing we can do is to head to either the Alliance or Horde questing hub. Horde will need to find this orc and accept the Path of Conquest. Alliance will instead need to find a dwarf. And the moment you have accepted this, you will receive an item in your bags, and this item can be used to summon an NPC at the Path of Conquest. You will need to discover the Path of Conquest before we can hand it in, so either fly or run around until this has been done. The moment you have discovered the Path of Conquest, you can hand it in, and both factions will therefore also be at the very same part. At the end, you can choose yet another new ring. There's going to be one for spellcasters, melee DPS and hunters, one for tanks, and I gotta be honest, I don't know who would like the one here with strength, agility, intellect, spell damage, and healing. Maybe a retro paladin or an enhancement shaman. No matter what, then you shouldn't be leaving Shadowmoon Valley yet. First, accept the one here, and as a horde, you will instead need to speak to the Tauren. Both factions are being told to head to the middle of Shadowmoon Valley. What we're currently doing will eventually cause us to be attuned for the raid Tempest Keep. Luckily, I've already covered all the different steps in my Tempest Keep attunement guide you can find in the description. Even though there's going to be many steps in this guide, then you won't have to complete many until we can unlock a new rare weapon. There's a tanking axe, a bow for hunters, a staff for spellcasters, a dagger for rogues, but also hunters who would like more hit, attack power, and agility, a two-hand axe for retro paladins and arms warriors, and last but not least, a healing staff for priest, druid, and resto shaman. There's yet another important thing to do. Head to Shadowmoon City, and at the lower city area, you can pick up a quest as both factions. This is telling you to either head to your Alliance or Horde questing hub in Shadowmoon Valley. In Shadowmoon Valley, both factions will need to do the exact same quest chain, but the great thing is that it isn't as long compared to the Tempest Keep one we did before. What you should be aware of is that most of these things can easily be soloed, but you should start looking for other people who would like to do the quest chain. At some point you will need to slay an elite drake. This requires you to be a party of either 4 or 5 people. You will also need flying mount in order to get to the drake's destination. Is it honestly worth doing? Definitely. At the end you can choose a new headpiece with 3 sockets. The cloth here mainly for spellcasters, one for melee plate DPS users, one for elemental shaman, but also useful as resto. As balance druid, you can choose this leather helm. Those of you playing either rogue or feral could go with this leather version. It's also pretty decent for enhancement shaman and hunters, else you got a male version you can choose instead. With all these things being done in the open world, let's move on to the next thing we can do, which is dungeons. The first dungeon I will do is Static Halls. In front of the entrance, we can pick up 2 quests. The first rewarding a neck, and there's going to be something for every specialization, so DPS, healer, and tank. The other quest is rewarding an offhand for spellcasters. I guess you could also use it as a healer in the beginning. I find the leather helm to be awful. The polearm could be good as a hunter due to all the agility, but it's lacking other stats such as hit, crit, and attack power. The reason why I do Static Halls as the first dungeon is because of the 2 quests, so we can get some guaranteed rewards. It's easy to do, and every boss is dropping a minimum of level 68 items. In fact, there's also going to be items at level 70, such as the dungeon sets. Yet another benefit is that at the end there's going to spawn a chest, and in this chest you get the key to another dungeon, Shadow Labyrinth. Before we do the dungeon here, then I would recommend you to start the Chaos and Attunement quest, which is picked up in front of the raid. In fact, there's going to be 2 quests, and one of these will automatically give you an item you gotta use at some nearby tombs. In those tombs, you also gotta collect some ghostly essence. The reason why I explain this super quickly is because I've already made a Chaos and Attunement guide you can find in the description, and this is way more detailed and slowly explained. But the moment you have taken care of both of these quests, you head back up, and then there's going to be a follow-up. It's telling you to head to Aldor Mountains, close to Dalaran. Here we hand it in, and we pick up yet another follow-up, telling you to head to Shadowmoon City. And at this point, you will also be ready to do Shadow Labyrinth, as we gotta head into Shadow Labyrinth to get the first key fragment. Before you head into Shadow Labyrinth, make sure to accept Trouble in Ocean Dawn from this human. Yeah, both factions can pick it up. Then we can head to Shadow Labyrinth, and in front of the entrance, you hand in Trouble in Ocean Dawn. There's going to be a follow-up, and remember to also accept the quest from the orc telling you to find a spy in the dungeon. This can be done right after you have killed the first boss. The reason why you would like to do these quests is because there's going to be 2 guaranteed rewards, or well, a reward from each of the quests. In addition to this, each boss are dropping level 60 to 70 items, and some of these will either be your pre-raid biz or your biz for phase 1. The moment you have slain the 3rd boss in the dungeon, you can hand in the Codex of Blood to the book in front of the boss location. There will then be a follow-up telling you to slay the final boss, Murmur. Slaying Murmur allows you to pick a new pair of boots. There will be some for cloth, leather, mail, and plate users. I would honestly recommend you to do Shadow Labyrinth a couple of times, the reason being that the loot in here are absolutely insane. Some of these items you will for example use when you're heading into tier 4 raids. Remember after slaying Murmur to also head over to this location, click on the object, summon the elite, slay it, and loot the first key fragment. This fragment you hand in Shattered City, and you will be getting a follow-up telling you to get the second and third key fragment. The second fragment is obtained in the dungeon Steam Vault. Before you head into Steam Vault, make sure to also pick up the quest, The Warlord's Hideout. It can be picked up at the NPC close to the Summoning Stone. The cloth head isn't that great, but the leather version is insane, even for those of you playing an Arms or Fairy Warrior. There is a plate helm, but this is going to be for tanks, as it's providing defense. The mail version, yeah, I guess you could use it as a hunter or enhancement shaman, but in my opinion, I would probably stick to the leather version as I'm lacking a lot of hit in the beginning. First, I will show you the second key fragment. It can be looted in the water just before the first boss. So yeah, if you don't wish to clear the entire dungeon, you can just head down here, summon the elemental, slay it, and loot the second key fragment. But you should honestly do the dungeon because of the other quest where you can get yourself a new headpiece, not to mention the final boss dropping insane pre-raid biz items. Especially if you're playing a hunter, as you can get 2 of your Beast Lord items. The moment you have got 4 of these items, you will get an insane bonus, and it will all of a sudden also be your pre-raid biz, if not your biz, until you have got enough epics from tier 4 raids. The third fragment is looted in the dungeon Architress. There's a door preventing you from entering the dungeon unless you have got the Architress key or someone in your party has. You should probably consider getting this key yourself, so you never have to make sure you have someone in your party. Another reason being that when you're getting the key, or well, as you're progressing through the different steps, you will be doing dungeons such as Botanica and Mechana. In Mechana, you can get this insane trinket with a lot of attack power and a use effect that increases your haste by 260. In Botanica, you can get Bangle of Endless Blessing, increasing your spirit by 130 for 20 seconds, and every time you're casting a spell, there's a chance that 15% of your mana regeneration will continue while casting for 15 seconds. The moment you have got your third key fragment, you can then head to Caverns of Time in Tanaris, speak to the Drake at the entrance, accept the quest, fly down, and then do the follow-up where you're gonna follow a servant for around 10 minutes. Once this has been done, you can head into Old Hillsborough Foothills, and we gotta do this dungeon in order to be attuned for Black Mirage, which is a dungeon we will do in just a moment. In fact, you won't just need to complete Old Hillsborough Foothills, you will need to do the last quest in the dungeon where you choose a reward. Once this has been chosen, you're attuned for Black Mirage. Next, we just gotta clear Black Mirage, and the moment you have slain the final boss, you will complete Master's Touch. Be aware you don't hand this in Shattered City, it's being handed in the dungeon. Once you have handed in this, you will receive a follow-up where you get the Master's Key, the key for Karazhan. Before you leave Black Mirage, then you might also want to continue farming the dungeon, as you can get some insane items in here. For example, this trinket, useful for hunters or any melee DPS, and as a healer, especially a shaman, you should probably try to obtain this trinket that increases your haste by 320 for 6 seconds. At this point, you're also attuned for Karazhan, but let's be honest, you're probably not geared enough yet, which is why you should head back to Hellfire. In Thrallmoor and Honorhold, you can pick up quests for Shattered Halls. Horde can pick up a total of 2 quests, and one of these with a guaranteed reward at the end. Alliance can pick up a total of 3 quests. Yeah, we still got the same rewards as Horde, but there's an additional one we can do where we're also getting a rare reward at the end. This is not obtainable as Horde. No matter what faction you're playing, then you should honestly consider doing the dungeon at least once. There's some pretty nice drops in the dungeon, items at 68 and up to 70. But what about the key you need in order to open up the gate, preventing you from entering the dungeon? It seems like we will be able to die in front of the dungeon, get past the gate without the key, click on the lever to open it for all the other remaining party members. I know they could potentially hotfix this. If so, well, then just watch my Shattered Halls key guide. You can find this video in the description. What I would be doing next is just to farm the dungeon I need the most. For example, if there's a drop I would like to obtain. Or if there's a reputation faction you would like to focus on, to for example get yourself a new hidden enchant, a rare or epic item, well then focus on spamming those dungeons. Remember, it will also be important to get to Revered with all the different factions so you can buy the heroic keys and do those dungeons on heroic mode, unless it's going to be an all character where your main already got the key, then you only need to get to friendly. To figure out the best dungeons and factions to focus on, you simply just Google your class and specialization and either choose the guide from Wowhead or any of the other trusted pages. One thing you should also be doing every single week, even though you might not like PvP, is to do arenas. The reason being that arenas has changed in Anniversary, so you will only need to get to 1700 rating in order to get your Gladiator weapons. But 1700 rating isn't a lot when every team starts at 1500. The only thing you gotta be aware of is that you won't be able to get your Gladiator weapons the moment you get to 1700 rating. No, you will need to do 10 games every single week, and every week you will be rewarded with arena points you save up until you have got enough for your new weapon. While you're searching for a new arena mate or a new dungeon, then you could also spend time and leveling up professions. Yes, it will be important as you can craft yourself rare and epic items. This also brings us on to bind on equip items you can sell on the auction house, or as a fresh level 70 tank, you could look for a high level blacksmither who can craft a fell steel set with stamina, defense, and many sockets. Those of you playing Retro Paladin, Arms, or Fairy Warrior could instead be buying the Rage Steel set. It is rather expensive. The most important is just going to be the shoulders, as it has 2 sockets, a lot of strength, hit, and crit. As a spellcaster, you could be looking for a tailor with the Spellfire set, head, and pants. Both of these being absolutely insane and still used in tier 5 content. Be aware, if you haven't leveled up tailoring to 350, you won't benefit from the set bonus. Another useful spellcaster item is going to be these braces, 12 intellect, a socket, and 30 spell damage and healing. Yet another spellcaster item to look out for is going to be this cloak or bag with 11 intellect and 35 spell damage and healing. Some tailors might also have been lucky enough to obtain the pre-raid base cloak for hunters and melee DPS, insane as it's providing a socket, crit, and attack power. Those of you playing Druid as a feral tank should be looking for a leatherworker who can craft the heavy cleft tooth set. This is insane as it's providing a ton of stamina, defense, and mini sockets. Yeah, Druids are using these items when they start raiding tier 4 content. Those of you playing feral DPS or rogue could instead be going for the fell leather set. In fact, many melee classes, including hunters, might be using these items because of all the hit, crit, and attack power. What you could be doing next is to start farming heroics. These are going to be more difficult compared to normal dungeons, but you can also get way better loot. For example, an epic item from the last boss. Throughout the entire dungeon, you will also receive a new currency, Badge of Justice, for every single boss kill. This you can exchange into epic items in the middle of Shattered City. So even though you might be unlucky and not win any items in the heroic, well then don't worry, at some point you have at least got enough badges to purchase an epic item. In Shattered City, we can every day also pick up a quest for a daily heroic. This rewards 2 Badge of Justice. Next, you just continue to farm heroics until you have got decent enough gear to be invited into raids. For example, as a spellcaster, you would like to head into Slave Pens and try to obtain this insane trinket that has a chance to proc 320 haste. If you wish to increase your chance of being invited into a raid, then you should definitely also enchant your items and buy all the consumables you need, as it will not only improve your character's performance, but also let people know that you're trying to be serious and prepared. What you can do to be even more prepared is to watch my other Burning Crusade videos. In fact, I would also recommend you to subscribe and hit the notification bell, as I will soon be publishing so many more that you don't want to miss. As always, thank you so much for watching and have an amazing day. Peace.